has been a leader in green growth. They've worked on this since 2010, 2011, as we were discussing yesterday. Very ambitious strategy. And they are convinced, the government here, that green growth is the way to go. They want to share that with many African countries. And we see here there's a large crowd of people that say Africa needs to embrace green growth. It's not only necessary, my message is, it's also affordable. So it's the best thing to do, not only because it's better for the environment, it's better for health, it's also better for the pocketbook.
And so when we're talking green growth, I mean, some people still are knocking their heads to get to understand what this actually really means. When does one know that actually we are headed towards a green growth economy as a nation? What are those components that we should be looking at?
Well, in a few years from now, we should really go to 100% renewable energy. But that renewable energy should also reach 100% of people, right? Because right now, many African countries, the grid, but it only reaches 20%. The other 80% need access to energy too, and it can be clean energy. All those motorbikes you see on the street, in a few years from now, I expect them to be all electric, as they are already in 100 Chinese cities. You know, buildings from now on, once the green compliance standards are in place, they all need to have rainwater harvesting. They need to come up with energy saving air conditioning and energy saving fridge. It can go everywhere.
And so someone listening to you right now would be just like, is this a pipe dream? Is this real? Is this possible?
Well, when I was given the first smartphone, first iPhone, on the day it came out in 2007, nobody believed that it would be where it is now, in everybody's pocket. And that, you know, Africa was a leader in M-Pesa, in smart mobile payments on those phones. So sometimes those changes, we call them disruptions, where one obsolete technology is replaced by the next one very quickly. Do you even have a landline anymore? You know, before people were waiting for the landline. Now we have smartphones, and we use them for all kinds of things we couldn't even imagine 10 years ago. These things we were talking about, they have to be disruptions.
There has to be disruptions, and so probably that might not happen in our lifetime, but our children's children would enjoy these fruits.
Absolutely not. Right. I think if you plan to be around by 2030,
Yeah.
I'm a bit older than you, but I plan to be around by 2030, it'll have to happen in the next 10 years.
How do we fast track this? How do we ensure that in the next 10 years we actually get there?
That's what we're doing here in a forum like this, sharing ideas, seeing how we can scale up. In the end, the key message we have here is it's not going to be donor financing. African Development Bank, Green Climate Fund, it's important, but they have to be the door openers. And then really it has to be the banks, the pension funds, and others who are going to have to pile in, because they have the large amounts of money. So it has to become normal. When you build a hotel, everybody knows what to do. When you build a green airport, and Bugesera Airport is going to be green, I visited last night, in all those columns you see rainwater harvesting pipes. Now it's cheap to do. It doesn't even cost more. But so far we don't think about these things, and later it's too expensive to add.
Right. And so when you talk about financing, it's important that you bring that up, because at the end of the day, we've seen young people or different startup companies wanting to actually plug themselves into this whole journey of going, economies going green. But the challenge has always been financing. Banks or financial institutions still don't want to understand or can't understand how do we finance a green
So we've set up structures where it isn't just a grant. Well, we've done those too. There's one big one from the Green Climate Fund for the government of Rwanda. But in other cases, we work with banks. And then the money from the Green Climate Fund is actually capacity building for the bank. So that they know if you go to the bank and you want a mortgage for your house, they know what to do. So they need some training of their own. And maybe even help with the first few loans so that they can cover some first loss. So that it becomes normal business for the bank. When a company comes to them and say, I want to do solar home systems in the secondary cities here. I want to set up an e-waste recycling company. I want to set up an electric motorbike company. That the bank can assess those risks and do business in the normal way they do.
And so what would you be wanting from those who actually form policies? Because at the end of the day, these things can only be as true as we wish them to be if there's the right policy to actually guide that. What sort of advice, what sort of things would you be wanting from the policymakers here?
In some areas, the government just needs to get out of the way. You know, there's still a lot of fossil fuel subsidies. That's a lot of money going to the wrong things that actually could go to the right things. So governments need to stop doing the things that don't help, and they need to become helpful. In the area of doing business, Rwanda has been doing really well. They've gone from, I understand, the 154th place of the best place to do business, right to the top. Things government does to make it easier for business to do business, right? And then in some places, like if we want mini grids, private investors will come in if the government offers a good power purchase agreement. Says we will take the energy for the next 20 years at this price and we'll be credit worthy. So those things won't happen unless there is a strong government with the right ideas that actually has some good ideas and can back them up.
Right. Someone listening to you says, DG is saying that we need to actually bring in the electric motorbikes and do away with all these ones. And government needs to actually remove these subsidies on fossil fuels. Yes. Yet, in most of African countries, when we discover oil, it's actually celebration around the streets, everybody, that we're going to be rich. So what are you trying to say here? That actually we should...
That you can step outside and discover that you have the sun, that you have all kinds of other natural resources that can make you rich even faster than oil, and that it will do so without killing your kids from pollution or without having the climate change that is threatening us all.
Right.
So we still want to be rich. We still want to see growth. We still want to have green jobs. But you know, I live in Asia, and yes, we've had enormous growth in the economy. People have decent incomes. But every morning, my wife has to check the air pollution to see if we have to wear masks. My 9-year-old son, his soccer tournament has been cancelled a few times because of air pollution. So we don't want that. We don't want that for your children. We want them to have jobs, but we want them to be healthy and live a healthy and productive life. That's green growth in the end.
That's green growth in the end. You speak of the young ones, and you remind me of the role of the young people in all this. How do they plug in? What sort of incentives, what sort of clear pipelines have we already created for them, so they can also feel that this is a journey that we too, instead of just saying that we should inherit the world in a good state, but we also have a role to play in actually making it safe.
From every age. I mean, I've spoken at primary schools where we talk with kids about the Sustainable Development Goals and what they can do.